Over the past few months, we have watched as the Occupy movement has set up camp in hundreds of locations across the country. Occupy Hartford was the latest to dismantle this past week, but certainly members say that that does not mean that their mission doesn't continue. We are here joined by Ted Donahue and Eric Gilbert, who are both members of Occupy Hartford, and also the Current's Jenna Carlessa, who is covering their occupation extensively. Thanks all for being here. And I guess, Ted, if we could start with you to talk about you know, it's a nice thing to say that the mission continues, but the physical occupation was actually a very important part of it, right?
Yeah, we agree. I mean, thousands of people drove by every day in the morning on their commute and on the way home. It was a statement. It was a political statement that this country is in distress, and that's what that Occupy of Turning Point Park represented. That for people who are struggling because of the recession, because of economic injustices, they could see that some people were uniting and beginning the process of trying to help solve these problems.
So will you physically occupy another location?
There's a lot of talk nationally about doing all sorts of different type of physical occupations. I think for Occupy Hartford, that's still to be determined. Right now, what we're concentrating on is our Platforms and Demand Committee, which is basically clarifying and developing the message which we'll introduce to the public and the community to, that'll be part of our rallying cry. But it's also going to be an opportunity to, get people inspired to come check us out and to contribute and to participate in what's going on.
Right. Jenna?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I spoke to some people at the site on Tuesday, they thought that it might actually expand the movement because of the attention that it got simply bringing down the site, clearing the site, getting people out of there. And it sounds like there's things continuing online and getting in touch with people through the internet. There's message boards up on the Occupy Hartford website, and the GA meetings continue as well.
Yeah, you talked about bringing forth a platform. I mean, certainly this next year is going to be an important time to have a platform if you have something to say. Right. Eric, I don't know if you wanted to touch upon some of the main points that you all will be clarifying.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of them was, the first one we solved was to end U.S. wars of aggression and occupation. Mm-hmm. Also, we want to end corporate influence over our government. And here we actually have 9 right now.
Wow.
Yeah. 2 is make the corporations and the rich pay their fair share and just share of taxes. Number 3 is quality housing, food, healthcare, education, childcare, and a basic income are lifelong human rights for all. Number 4, a broad employment program that recognizes everyone's right to meaningful, socially and environmentally beneficial work at a living wage while prioritizing the needs of socially and economically marginalized groups in the local community.
So these are, not to interrupt, but I mean, wasn't that one of the criticisms was that it was kind of so far-reaching?
Well, I think, we got to keep our eye on the prize. I mean, when you read these statements, different parts are going to resonate with different people. For some people, they're very passionate about the 2 wars that the United States has been involved in. Other people who live in Hartford and are part of a marginalized community are going to recognize that we're trying to connect with them. So our approach is to be as far-reaching as we can because we need people to be engaged. There's people whose experiences we haven't heard yet in the occupation, and we want to encourage them to come and share what their experience is of dealing with the reality of this economy and the conditions in our country right now.
Jenna, was this, when you were covering it, I mean, aside from the physical occupation, was there anything different about this particular movement than others that you've covered, or?
I think it ties in pretty well with the rest of the Occupy, and in fact, a couple of the people who were at the site when it was cleared said that they would move on to join other occupations, and I think there's as well some movement from Hartford to New Haven this coming weekend.
Tell me, both of you, how and why you got involved. Eric?
Why I got involved basically was the unjust inequalities in the economics of this country, where 1% can control 40% of the wealth. That just doesn't sound right. I mean, that's
what do you do? I mean, what's your background?
What's my background? Both my parents are union reps. Oh. My father works for United Public Service Employees Union here in the state of Connecticut. My mother was part of CSEA before she moved to Washington State. I've been very political my whole life. Actually, before I could even vote, I was involved in campaigns as well.
Are you working or?
Am I working? I'm a full-time student at Manchester Community College.
Oh, interesting. Studying?
Studying liberal arts and studies.
Excellent. And you got involved?
Well, I got involved through Twitter. I mean, it wasn't being reported in the media at all, and for me, Twitter is a very passionate place to follow politics and to get and share information. And then I started hearing about Occupy Wall Street, and as I started digging deeper, I became really excited because it was a spontaneous movement. And for me, I always vote. I participate in our democratic process. I find out about issues. And for me, this was sort of my first calling to get involved as an activist. And a lot of us, we volunteer our time. I mean, I work, I go to school, I have a son. So a lot of us, we have a lot going on in our life, but we know that this is a calling, and we're trying to help move it forward. And it's exciting to be part of it.
Did you find it to be effective here in the city of Hartford?
It certainly got the attention of city officials. There was an ongoing process, at certain points where they were regularly meeting with the people at the Occupy site or having Occupy people come down to City Hall or to another location to meet with them. So I think their message was received by the people that they were intending it to be received by.
Right. Interesting. What did you think worked about it, Eric?
What did I think worked about it? The consensus part of our direct democracy we have set up for our GAs, it allows us to get things done. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It requires a 90% consensus, and people can block it as well if they see something that is not good for the group or good for the movement moving into the future.
Interesting. What did you think didn't work?
Well, I think supporting the physical occupation, I mean, that was the learning curve. I was actually involved in trying to help that as best I could. We have a Facebook page, and we have like over 4,300 people now. We need people. When we were doing that, we were asking people, especially after the Halloween snowstorm, it was clear that it was going to be an enormous challenge to make it work and to keep people safe. So for me, that was one thing that we learned a lot from. But and when your point about what's going on in the city, we're also reaching out to other community activist groups that already exist in the city. We've helped organize 2 meetings. We have one coming up this coming Thursday on the 15th at the Central Baptist Church at 457 Main Street. And this has been really exciting for us because there's some organizations in the city of Hartford, they don't even know about each other. So we're trying to build an alliance where we get together and we start to problem solve, and we may plan actions together, we may do other things. So it's exciting, and for these groups, they represent a lot of different challenges that are going on in the city and in our state. So, Occupy Hartford definitely wants to localize its message.
Right, and it's, what's your website?
Well, it's occupyhartford.com.
Okay.
OccupyHartfordCT.
OccupyHartfordCT.com. Okay, great. Eric Gilbert, Ted Donahue, and Jenna Carlessa, thanks for being here. We certainly look forward to seeing what your next steps are.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for being here. And thank you for joining us. Don't forget, if you missed something here on The Real Story, you can now watch it online by going to CT